Right ho.
There he is.
How you going?
I'm good,
Oh,
mate. You're a sight for sore eyes, I can tell you.
jeez. You too. It's nice to be talking to someone about music.
Oh, absolutely. Instead of all this other stuff. But as you know, it's a
No,
mandatory requirement, my friend. I'm going to have to ask you how you've been getting on through all of this stuff, especially missing live shows.
it has been a long haul. I've been lucky enough to have some type of interaction with live crowds. I've done a couple of Angels shows here and there. Darwin and Perth, funnily enough, I've done some Angels shows. Um, and I did a bunch of streaming from the Governor Hindmarsh here in beautiful Adelaide. So I've had some connection, but there's nothing that you can't replicate it. And I know us musos bang on, oh, you can't replicate, but you can't. It's like I guess footy players. You can train all you want, but unless you're out there smashing it up on the field, you're not doing it. It doesn't feel like you're doing what you're meant to do. So roll on touring.
Oh, absolutely. It's been so hard for everyone. But now, just the thought of a Screaming Jets tour, the thought of standing in front of you on stage, it's just so exciting. And how are you really feeling deep down about getting out there on the stage again to some of those big daylight crowds, like the Red Hot Summer Tour crowds, being able to see the faces in celebration again?
Yeah, look, it's exciting and daunting all at once because I was talking to my very good friend Dario Bortolini from the Baby Animals yesterday, and as much as you want to get out there, I said, mate, what if we forget? I mean, 2 years or 18 months, it'll be the best part of 2 years, with only doing it sporadically rather than I mean, we're bands like us and the Baby Animals, Angels, all those bands who are on the Red Hot Summer Tour, James Rain, The Living End, we're just used to doing it and doing it and doing it again.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, I think match fitness is what it's going to go. What happens is if you're out of breath, you get out of time, and if you get out of time, you don't know where you're supposed to be. So I reckon I've got to make sure I get my match fitness up before we get back out there.
Oh, absolutely. As I look at that image behind me, I mean, when are you ever out of breath? It just doesn't happen. So I reckon you
Yeah.
wouldn't be too far off form.
Yeah, I've been very lucky over the last 7 years, I guess, especially to have both the Screaming Jets and the Angels on the road. So I was just flipping between the two and didn't have to worry about staying on top of my fitness. But now I'm just chasing sheep around a paddock.
Magnificent, as we all would love to be, of course.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
before getting too much into touring and so forth, 1990, All for One, it hits the shelves. It became such a defining mark in the lives of so many Australians. And 30 years later, just sparks so many memories and brings it back to the fore. Moments from your album, especially, became the soundtrack to our lives. What do you recall from that time? What's your takeaways from that moment of launch?
Oh, it was extremely exciting. To go from we'd all been in bands in Newcastle before that had maybe put out cassettes or just sold them at shows and stuff like this. But this was the big time. It was like albums in our hands, CDs. We were going to signings at JB Hi-Fi and a bunch of other places around Sydney and Western Sydney. I remember we did a tour of shopping centre car parks on the back of a truck, trying to emulate, I guess, our biggest heroes, AC/DC. And there's footage of us playing, it must be 10 o'clock in the morning. There's people going into the shopping centre, coming out of the shopping centre. And we're doing Sister T's, me and all me foul mouth glory. This how we're trying to sell the album. You can get it in the shop. Yeah, just so many great memories of the interest that was going on, and as I say, for a bunch of blokes from Newey, we just were blown away by it all, and obviously rode the wave and had a great old time.
It must be such a kaleidoscope of memories from that time, all swirling in a whirlwind of recollection. But how just before that time, how did you, when you put everything together, you'd done the hard yards, always been an organic band. So working together on the music, how did you feel about the album itself just before release? How did you feel about it success-wise? Did you think it would be the beast it became?
We were kind of hopeful. There was a lot of buzz. Obviously, Ruart Records, who we were signed to, they'd had a bunch of success with indie bands, but they were very excited about the fact that they were going to cross over, and and hopefully we were going to bring them more into a mainstream focus. And of course, Warner's were our record company. Warner's, Polygram, well, one of the two, Polygram, I think, the first time. So they were our record company. They were very excited to have an Australian band on an indie label that weren't going to just get played on Triple J, although we thank Triple J for their support early on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just wanted to get out there and show the world that we could mix it up with the big boys, and having an album was like a document to say, yep, well, here's our work papers. We can come and have a crack like you blokes.
Now, did you find yourself reflecting on the evolution of AC/DC back in the day? Because there's so many similarities. Did you find yourself sort of thinking about the AC/DC boys and in hope that it would be the same sort of success?
Yeah, shirts off. Warmo always wore his cut-off denim shorts like Bond. Look, we kind of we looked up probably, I guess, to the Angels a lot. When we first started off, we'd finish band practice. I still call it band practice.
Yep.
I hate calling it rehearsal. We'd finish band practice and we'd have a couple of hot ones, and we'd watch The Last Stand, or we watched Narara 83. They were kind of like our blueprints for what live Australian rock had to be. So yeah, I mean, we just wanted to be one of those bands that kind of could bring out an album and then go out on the road, and through people coming to hear it live, that's how you got hits. It was kind of like we thought it was a much more organic process than it turned out to be. I mean, who would have thought that that wasn't just a fluke? U2 being followed around from the day just about they first started with cameras everywhere. I thought that's what happened. All these big bands that had all this footage of them being young and on the uprise and stuff. I thought there'd just be people with cameras around. Oh, here they come. They're about to be big, Turns out you got to orchestrate things a little more than that. But yeah, we just wanted to get out there and live that dream.
Absolutely. Of course, now you're fighting them off with a stick. But I noticed in a recent comment where you reflect that the re-recording of All for One had to be the way the kids do it now. But I've got to ask, mate, are you feeling a little bit ancient now, though?
Yeah, well, look, I wish I'd been paying attention, because, I mean, even though everything's crossed over from a mixing desk to digital, all the principles of being able to work a desk, as you probably know, are kind of the same. You still have to have some type of mixing or being able to slide up faders, etc. Not me, 30 years in a studio, I've never learned anything. I never learned a thing. I was always off doing something else. All the other guys have at least, differing levels of skill with recording in the digital age, but I record on this and it's terrible. And I play it to people. I go, they're like your parents when they say, listen to this, Mum. I go, that's nice, dear.
Absolutely. Which leads me to ask, Dave. I mean, it's a tough question. I'll apologise for it in advance, but in the context of the band, I mean, who was Dave Gleeson back then? How would you describe yourself? Terribly different to now, or how would you sum yourself up back then?
Look, I was living the dream, and if anyone was having one, I was having two. If there was goofing off to be done, I'd do it. But having said that, I was very lucky to work with the producer, Steve James, pardon me, who pretty well, I'd just go in and I'd sing the song maybe 3 or 4 times. 3 times is pretty well the max. I'd go in there, just smash it 3 times, and then he'd kind of comp a vocal together and say, what's that? How's that sit with you? We'd change a few things. And then once I had the vocal that I wanted to hear in my head, then I'd just go in there and pretty well smash it and go off and
and away we go.
But yeah, it was, and I love that process because the hardest time for me in all the recording is when you're trying to get the initial track. So you go in the studio. If you're lucky, you'll get a drum track. What you're trying to do is get a drum track and a bass track, and then you can build everything on that. As long as they're sitting tight, unreal. The thing is, I can't just phone in a vocal because as soon as I start laying off the intensity, drummer starts going, and then everyone starts doing so I have to, all my intensity, if it takes 30 takes, I've got to do an intense take all those times, and then they don't get fucking used anyway.
A massive waste of time, absolutely.
Yeah, so what we come down to is a version that I might have sung the greatest thing in the world takes and takes ago in my own head, but it's forgotten. But anyway, that's just the joy of recording.
Absolutely, the old cutting room floor, eh? And of course, did Steve approach things differently? I mean, I guess there was always the intention to celebrate the album 30 years on, but to bring him back and work on the album is such a big thing, to make it that organic approach that you always have. Did he approach it differently?
Well, obviously, I realised that you do waste a lot of time in a recording studio because speaking about my vocals before, I went to my mate's place, and over 2 4-hour sessions in his bedroom, I got all my vocals done, right? And obviously that was because we weren't creating anything at the time, we're just kind of replicating. But yeah, it took me 3 days when we did it the first time. And the boys, there is a lot of wasted time because you have the ability to come and listen back in the studio, and you turn around. So what do you think? All that cool stuff that happens in the studio. You're swiveling around on your chair, asking the producer and the engineer. And so you miss out on all that type of stuff. But Steve James is integral to us. He brings such a vibe. He's often helpful, very helpful in arrangements, making things not sound samey, coming up with little extra bits that like middle eights and stuff like that. So his approach kind of obviously has changed. He started off in Virgin Studios back in London in 1969. Sorry, Steve, if that dates you. Maybe early 70s. So his approach is always about getting the best performance out of us all, and everyone gets their equal share. It's not like, yeah, come on, hurry up, you're just a rhythm guitarist, or it's everyone kind of gets his undivided attention. So we love him. He's a jet for sure. He's the, I don't know how many there's been through the Jets, but he's one of them.
Oh, absolutely. And I sort of include him in the band specifically for this album and the recreation, or the reawakening, if you will. But if we look at the whole band, including Steve, who out of everybody has grown up the most, do you think?
I don't know. It's look, we all have our times. So I think if you ask Paul, he'd say him. Obviously, Jimmy and Scotty, they're oh look, I don't want to cast he who was without sin cast the first stone, so I'll have to say I'm the one who's grown up the least.
Oh, so there we go. Absolutely brilliant. And look, I will ask you to pass on my wife's humble apologies to Scott after he came down off stage with you guys. I think it was Mount Gambier on the Red Hot Summer Tour, and just happened to ask my wife about her camera. And she's given him this look that made him go away. You're thinking, poor bugger,
no.
Go and play with your guitar and leave the cameras alone, will you? But no, so I'll apologise for that, mate. But look, with the tracks themselves, and especially after reflecting on how many times we've enjoyed them live, and to be able to take on this new meaning post-COVID is going to be something huge. But do the tracks themselves, do they carry the same meaning, or have they evolved for you when you're enjoying the tracks delivering them? Is there any difference to them as opposed to back in the day?
Yeah, I definitely, you're bang on. I mean, the evolution of a song like "Shine On." So, "Shine On" was a song Paulie wrote. He was doing a lot of trips down from Newcastle to Canberra on the train to play with his band Steve Groove and the Mourners, or a band he was playing in. And I think it came from all his train journeys and stuff like that. So over the years, I morphed that into telling people the story of how, we started off as five young blokes from Newcastle and hitting the highway down to Sydney. We had a pocket full of dreams and a pocket full of drugs, and the drugs ran out about halfway to Sydney, and the dreams remain. And we found out you can get drugs other places anyway. So it all worked out for the best, right? So that was my rave that I just came up with because I love a little story when I'm on stage with the Jets, and but then going in and re-recording it. Then I had this vision. All I was remembering was us getting into Harry the High Ace and setting up so it was three across the front, and that was one of our roadies included, and three in the back. And we'd set it up so Paulie's bass box was like a lounge suite, and we'd have everything we needed there, cans of VB and stuff. Little did we know that it had a leak in the back of it that was giving us carbon monoxide poisoning every 3-hour trip to Sydney and home. But we didn't notice. We just had headaches quite a lot. So I was able then to totally visualize this story that I'd made up with the soundtrack as I was singing it. So that's kind of the different growth that it had for me. And of course, the last song on the album, I honestly can say I haven't listened to that song for 30 years. And to do it this time, I think I probably nailed it. I probably was more in touch with the lyrics, because when I was 24 singing, "Is there such a thing as senility? Is it in an old mind? Is it there all the time?" Senility? I'm 24. I won't get to senility. Now I'm 53. I'm thinking, I wonder if there is.
Absolutely. Oh my God, what recollections. But I don't want to over milk the concept here, Dave, but with so many people, seeing the chance to celebrate All for One live with the Screaming Jets as a glimmer of hope after such a long ordeal, I think people are really feeling that way about it. What do you think live shows will do for people post-COVID?
Well, look, I dream of a time where everyone's rocking out together again. That's what it's all about for any band. I think any live band. It's lovely to have crowds in there, and I've been, as I said, doing gigs where crowds are sitting around, they're not allowed to dance and not allowed to stand up the front and go high five you and stuff like that. And it's something that hopefully, as we get on top of all this stuff, will come back. But yeah, I just think I think that live experience. I think that the social aspect of it, lining up out the front with people you've seen the band at the gig 20 times before. You probably said good day to them and stuff like that. But all these interactions that aren't happening now are hopefully going to be happening in the new year, and when we can, it just all feeds off itself. It's the sense of, I mean, obviously there wasn't much of a sense of belonging in the early days, because everyone was smashing each other and falling on top and moshing and stage diving, but now I think over the 30 years you build an audience in all different parts of the country who are a community, and they see each other, whether they know each other's names, but they know that they've been at the same gigs before over the years. And that's something that I'm hoping people are going to really reconnect with and get out and become the rock and roll Australian community again.
Oh, from your lips to God's ears, my friend. Absolutely, that's the ultimate goal. And I guess less of the nightclub stamp back in the day and more the black eye was a sign that you'd been to the Screaming Jet show, which is, I think, a love in itself at the time. But
yeah, no, it was they were pretty torrid times. But not that we encouraged it, but that was kind of like the mark of my brothers, two older brothers, we lived up the road from Cardiff Workers, which was all the bands played there. In Excess, Ice House, Carl Chisel, John English, everyone played there. But I remember lying in bed and I'd hear him coming, oh, how's that fight down the front? And I'd be like, oh, that must have been a good band. They're the bands that make people fight. So it's just an enthusiasm thing, I think.
Absolutely, beautifully put. Dave, I know I pose this question almost every time to you, and I don't want it to become a boring routine, but it seems more pertinent now than ever before when we think about the fact that there's these young people in our society that don't know about the concept of international travel. It's just something that's not been around for so long, or so it seems. But when you look out into the crowd, particularly with more recent gigs, are you becoming more aware of the multi-generational celebration of the Screaming Jets when you see granddad, dad, mum, grandma, kids, grandkids all getting together and enjoying the music? Does that give you a bit of a sense of pride?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing that you start off being in a rock band for is to get on it, meet chicks, tour around the place, live a bohemian lifestyle. And then as time goes by, I mean, once we got into the Jets out of my first band, then it became a bit more serious. Like, okay, then this is what I do. People get paid. We got a 10-man crew. We got yada, yada, yada. And then you kind of get into the whole swing of things. That as long as everyone does their job, it's going to be all right. But obviously, as time goes by, you start to think, well, as long as I don't stuff up, I can do this forever. Or well, till they drag me, till someone hooks me, get off. But and obviously you take pride in the fact that along the way people have loved what you've done, have stuck with you. Some people have fallen off, and they'll come back and say, "Mate, I couldn't come and see you when Warmo left or whatever." And as time goes by, people realise that a band's like a footy team, I guess, in that the personnel changes over, but the kind of the ethos is the same. We still get out there and rock out, and obviously me and Paulie take a huge amount of pride in being at the helm for 30 years and still remaining great mates, and having been able to put Jimmy and Scotty and Cambo in the mix is testament to the fact that we love what we're doing, and we're loved by the people for what we do. So it's a great feeling of pride.
Oh, magnificent. And of course, we thank you very much for re-releasing the 1990 album, All for One. To be able to relive those hits again makes us all feel like we're part of the journey as well. So, Dave, to you and the boys, thank you very much for this. Thanks very much for the time to catch up with you today. And I cannot wait to see you out on the road.
Oh, bring it on. Cannot wait. Yeah, thanks so much for your time. And this is kind of starting the ball rolling. This very interview is kind of the first one that's going right. It's happening, and we're coming out to see everyone, and the album's out soon. So rock on.
That makes me proud, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Great to catch up. We'll see you in person.
Cheers, again. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Rock on.
Bye-bye.